Dispatchers help callers on the worst days of their lives. For over 25 years, we've been there. A silent partner in millions of calls thanks to our redundant and diverse networks that ensure call delivery. Today, cities are bigger, traffic more congested, and the challenge is more complex. But you're never alone, because InDigital is quietly improving, implementing, and driving the next generation of 911, so you're supported in every situation. Make the switch at indigital.net.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, how's it going? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, True Stories from the 911 Dispatchers Who Live Them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out to subscribers of the podcast, as always. And this is going to be like episode number 7. I mean, it's really 570-something, but what I mean by episode 7 is I am here in Cobb County in Georgia. I've been doing back-to-back episodes with some of the 911 professionals here at this center, and it has been awesome. I'm also out here doing a communications course. I taught yesterday, which is Tuesday. Today's Wednesday, and then tomorrow, Thursday, I'll be teaching again. So it has been excellent, and I have a returning guest with me today, as you could probably hear her chuckling already earlier. My returning guest today is Emily, and she is a CTO, again, here at Cobb County 911 out of Georgia. How's it going?
It's going well. You know, the only thing I think about when you laugh at me laughing is every time an open mic, the ba ha ha ha.
Yes.
That is literally me in person too.
This is correct, yes. So for anyone who is listening right now, as you may or may not know, I do an open mic live every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Unless I'm traveling, then I do it either the next day or I try to do it a day prior. Either way, when Emily has been on there and she's laughing at whatever I'm either saying or doing or whatever, it's always a bah ha ha ha.
But it's so fitting to me.
It is. I mean, you're doing it right now. You're doing the bah ha ha. So for those who are listening, because you've been, like I said, you are a returning guest. You've been on here before. So for those who are listening right now who may not have heard that episode, just kind of a quick recap. How long have you been here at Cobb County?
Yeah.
You know, what was it like when you first got here? Or I guess your choice to get into public safety to begin with, and maybe some of the challenges that you've had so far.
Yeah. So my story is a little bit differently with personal challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been here at Cobb County. It's been my only agency for 911 for 8.5 years. And I fell into 911. I was doing search and rescue before that, so I was kind of in the public safety, but kind of a secondary responder in a sense. But I went to college, was going for communications, had no idea where that was going to lead me. And then my first semester, like 2 weeks before finals, I got thrown from a horse into a metal pole, walked on it for 3 days. When I finally went to the doctor, about a week after going to the doctor, we discovered that my back was broken. There was too much inflammation and internal bleeding for them to know it right away. I started over. Everyone says I start over at 18, but I started over kind of twice. Went to college to start over, then came home and had to start over again. I worked at Subway and then went into a call center not in public safety, and it was a very terrible experience. It was very toxic. all of it. Well, I met my coworker now, and through something totally unrelated than all of that, in an animal rescue that I worked, was sugar gliders. And I asked him and his wife like what they did, and just kind of small talk in a sense. And he said, I'm a 911 dispatcher. I'm like, so what all do you do? And nobody thinks about 911 as like a career if they've never really heard it, or that somebody around them hasn't been one. And that's starting to change now through your podcast and other outreaches like that. So what do you guys do? Like, what does that really mean? And he started telling me about the job, and I'm like, man, I look for dead people in search and rescue. I can handle that. I can do it.
Yeah.
I applied that night, and a few months later, I got hired on, and I've been here on a wild ride since.
It has definitely been a wild ride for you,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of different things that have happened, a lot of challenges as well that you've had too. I mean, at what point, for those who are listening, because obviously I know,
Yeah.
but at what point were you working and you realized, like, I can't really hear
Yeah.
well of what's going on?
So it was about 5 years in.
Mm-hmm.
We get a like small hearing test done when you get hired, and about 5 years in, right after a really traumatic time, and I was on, the virtual conference last December and spoke on that whole story there. But after about 6 months of just kind of tragedy after tragedy in my own personal life, I'm trying to get settled back in after all of that at work. And I said, something's not right. I can't hear. And it was my left ear. And to preface, I guess, this, as a child, I was deaf and had a reconstructive surgery that brought most of my hearing back. And this job makes you focus your hearing. You really learn how the active listening, but you really learn how to like dial in. And I didn't know, like I didn't realize that. Well, about 5.5 years in 2021, I'm like, I can't hear right out of my left ear that I didn't have that surgery. I said, I'm not hearing what I should be hearing. And I went back to the county clinic and had a basically repeat of that hearing test I did when I got hired. And they were like, this is bad. Like, this is hearing aid, like this is bad. So I went to an audiologist, and they did a huge, like, very long in depth hearing test. And they're like, it's not as bad as they made it out to be. I just came from work that day and then went and had my hearing tested. I think that played a part. We both think that kind of played a part for a little bit. We're like, it's not as bad. But we discovered my ears aren't hearing at the same level. They're not processing at the same level. And that was a lot of my problem. I had my headset on one ear, and trying to hear everything else, it wasn't processing correct. So I was just borderline of hearing aids. I needed hearing aids in like one ear for the nerve damage. But she was, let's just try them on. And I tried them on, and I started bawling. I could hear things that I never knew I wasn't hearing. And the things that I took mom with me, because like my mom's kind of the encyclopedia of my childhood, like medical issues. And she went to the other end of the room, the corner, and turned around. Because if I'm not looking at you, I can't hear you unless it's like the headset that, you can dial in. But if you're in a store and you kind of turn and walk away, I can't hear you. And she went to the far corner of the room, and she turned around and she lowered her voice. She's like, can you hear me? And tears just started, streaming, like bawling baby. And I realized how much I hadn't been hearing, and I had just gotten accustomed to my whole life. Focused on reading lips. The pandemic with masks kind of really made that hard. But this job, I was like, no, this job has helped my hearing so much. We realized then my hearing has changed, and the processing was completely different than what it should be. So I got hearing aids, and it has been a godsend in this job. So,
like I said, that you've had a lot of challenges that you've gone through. So you have that emotional moment with your mom.
yeah.
You can hear. Now, what happens when you come back to dispatch that first day? Like, was it as kind of emotional or more so eye-opening
It was
to what you could
overwhelming.
hear? Really?
It was overwhelming.
Yeah.
You don't realize the little things that are so loud and annoying if you don't hear them. And like the pecking on the keyboard, it's like, man, I can hear this now. Like,
Yeah.
I understand why people get so, annoyed at the clicking of pens and stuff. Like, you can hear it now. I didn't want to tell anybody that I got hearing aids. I didn't want anyone, maybe not dispatchers per se, because they're going to be around me and whatnot. They might see a difference, but they also see me up here before and after, still doing the job, still working through that struggle. I didn't want them to necessarily look down on me, that I wasn't as equal to them. And I didn't want my officers specifically to think, like, callers don't know. Like, you're answering a question, they're talking to you, like, they have no idea, right? They don't have that connection with you other than that one phone call. And the officers, the firefighters, I work police a lot more. So the officers, they know you. Like, they form that connection. They know who's on the radio. Even if they don't know your name, they know, like, hey, she's been here a minute, or, anything else. I didn't want them to think I couldn't be their lifeline if they needed it. I didn't want them to think I'm a tactical dispatcher, so I go out in the field with them on SWAT calls, that I couldn't hang and handle that. I messaged the sergeant that was working the radio that day. I took one of the busiest radios that day, so I really jumped in. And I said, hey, just so you know, I don't really want everyone knowing, but I just got hearing aids. Today is my first day with them. I might be switching equipment out to try to make sure it works. And he said, I got you. If anyone asks, I'll tell them, you're working through equipment, technical stuff, and don't worry about it. Like, you're here. And he was just so awesome with that, like big brother in a sense, kind of. And I still talk to him every once in a while. I still text him and be like, hey, how are you? He's switched to a different department in the police department. And after a while, I was like, you know what? It is me. And I finally put it out there in a sense where I wasn't hiding it. And I was embraced. And one thing, my coworker, almost a year later, made a comment I didn't think I needed to hear. And she said, why would you hide that? Why would you care? If it's helping you do the job that you're good at, why does it matter? I'm like, dang, I never thought of it like that. I thought it was like, I'm broken, like, I'm not working. And now I realize I just have 2 extra parts that help me, So it was a lot to adjust to.
You know what I love about your story is that, one, the courage to talk about it and share it, and the fact that you did have folks around who helped you realize, like, a lot of times we have to get out of our own heads, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was
huge.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's part of it as well. Well, also on social media recently, I've seen a few people who have mentioned, things about hearing or hearing loss and such, and how they're dealing with it. And folks who are going through something similar or close to it, they will hear your story and find that inspiration as well. That is what good leaders do. It's what good leaders say. And was a kind of a good segue here. You've actually, you've got a good, you actually have a class that you're teaching, actually coming up at the, Dare to Be Great in December next month, and it's called Things Great Leaders Say. So it just seemed to fit. Like, it seemed to fit very well there.
With that, I have had people reach out to me, and I have seen that a lot on social media and different things, and just bringing up or even tagging me and saying, hey, you might be able to help. Like, what can you tell this person? And there's such a stigma of not only the mental health in not being okay, but also you have to be 100% all the time. And especially this year, I'm learning, like, with my own medical, going on this year, that's not always the case. And as with my class, a lot of things that I have said, but a lot of things that other people have told me are going to be kind of the topic of discussion. But I don't think in the sense that you're thinking about. I think that some of the stuff that great leaders say, it's going to be different than what everyone is expecting from me, because I don't mean to cause waves, but just my personality and who I am, I think is a lot of, unless you really talk to me, you really don't know how to take me.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of things that great leaders say that you don't know how to take. And if you don't get the full picture, the meaning of what they say just falls by the wayside. The one question that I had, this whole idea of this class came up with one person said something or did something, more so rather. And I said, man, I wish more people, I wish more supervisors or those in leadership roles actually would do what he did and say what he did. And it kind of led into a question of, what do you wish you heard leaders say more? And the answer to that, I asked several people. I asked supervisors. I wanted to get some of that. And they gave me all of the blanket that you hear all the time. It's okay not to be okay. But then what do you do?
Right.
Great, I'm not okay. Then what? Then what do you say? And there's a lot of statements that great leaders say that need a follow-up. And that follow-up is going to be, I think, what is going to surprise a few more people without giving out all of the things that I have listed out.
Right, yeah.
But it's a lot of, okay, I'm here, now what? I've done this, I've said this, but now what? And that's going to be a huge thing, I think, for everyone in or out of dispatch. Some of the best leaders I've seen don't have a title. They don't have that formal anything, and I would want to follow them more, or I want them to be a mentor, or they have guided me more without that formal title, just based on what they say or how they do things or handle things. So that's kind of what I focus on.
You know, and I get that as well, because when I've done Imagine Listening, and I know that there are directors in there, I turned and looked at those folks, and I said, now that you've heard all of this, and mentioned the same thing, like it's okay not to be okay, I say it myself. But I've said to people, and I've said to directors and such, now that you see that your people are hurting, now that you see that all of this is the first step, this is opening the door for them to share. That's step number one.
Right.
But where do you go from here? Like, what are you all going to do to continue to make sure that they are getting whatever help that they need?
Right.
Or maybe even just someone checking on them, or anything like that. What are you going to do?
Right. And I know that on a daily basis, there's a lot that can be said or handled, or a lot of frustration because things aren't getting said or handled in a specific way across the board. Not just in my department, because it's going to happen everywhere, but in the profession. You hear, or even outside of the profession, on a daily, this isn't just leaders of 911 supervisors. I want to be that. I'm not a supervisor here, and I chose not to do that supervisor assessment because of what I had going on in my personal life. And it wasn't anything of, I don't think one day I could do the job and with training be, great or exceed or, move up or move anywhere that, people think. It's more of, I can't give something that 100% right now. And it's been kind of eye-opening to see how people respond to just everything with that question. What do you wish leaders would say? Or what kind of leader do you want to follow? And that has been kind of an adventure in itself, of just asking people, just observing people, just kind of seeing out there, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And what makes you the person you are and how good you are at what you do or where you're at. Has been very eye-opening.
Yeah, I can just imagine, because so for me, thinking about that question as well, I want someone who's going to be real with me. I don't want someone who's going to just beat around the bush. Like,
Yeah.
if there's an issue, tell me to my face.
Yeah.
But also, if I'm going through something and you've been there, give me an example.
Yeah.
You know, let me know so that we can, or so that I could be able to wrap my mind around this. Which is why, like in the class that I was teaching yesterday, that you were in as well. That's why I go through a lot of the shit that I went through, so that people know what it is or what it's like, because maybe they're going through the same thing and they're like, okay, now I can hear what this person is saying. I know that I'm going through the same thing, and I can not completely mirror off of what I did or whatever, but at least have an idea to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
Because like we were saying, it's okay not to be okay, but where do you go from there? And that's why I mentioned, the breathing techniques, the yoga, like all this other stuff, so that you can work on a way to move forward. As I was saying yesterday, and I'll say now, I am not a doctor. I'm not a therapist, nothing like that. However,
You care.
I care, yes. And I'm just teaching from experience.
Yeah. And that's one thing that it's been a lot of, I have gone through a lot of weird ups and downs. And I haven't talked a whole lot about, I know you know what's going on like right now, but I know in April, even from ups and downs of like this job and huge management changes or huge like phone upgrades that, that you deal with in the job, life changes, life happens. So in April, I was taken to the hospital by one of my supervisors because of what we thought was heart issues. And now going through one thing that has been told to me, because we take so much, we are everyone else's backbone. We're everyone else's rock. We are doing for everyone else that we don't want to take care of ourselves. And ended up going on a trip, as you know, like this last month, to a doctor across the country and got some answers, and am now kind of shell-shocked because I'm like, well, I don't have what I thought I have, but now I have 3 more diagnoses. What do I do with that? And, someone told me, you now have a game plan. You now know what you're up against, and you now have a game plan. You can now build on how to make yourself better. And I think that really can be sent across the board with mental health, physical health, just the work environments. Like, if you don't have a game plan, you're treading water and not getting anywhere. There's no shore in sight. If you have a game plan, you're that much closer to the shore. So it's been, even with that, the taking it to a leadership standpoint is kind of where my mind has been with this, and wanting to know the good, the bad, the ugly, be real with me. Like, I know I've had to take a step back and, hey, I can't do the overtime right now because I physically just need to rest. Mm-hmm. And that's hard. That is so hard. And it was also shocking to see some of the reactions. Like, where have you been? Like, why aren't you here? Like, people have gotten that expectation. And it's like, it's okay to take a rest. It's okay to, and I've had to learn that. I've had to learn that, like, if I want to be my best, especially when I have a recruit, I've got to show them that it's okay to step back and really focus.
Right. Because a lot of times we don't listen to our body, right?
Yeah.
We do not listen. And kind of how we were talking yesterday, there are moments like we might get like little hints here and there of, wait, do I need to take a step back for a moment? But we're so on the go, and it's like, I'll be all right. Just keep going. But we care about everybody else. We always forget about ourselves.
Right. And I know that with the hearing and also with all of everything else going on medically with me, it has kind of refocused me in a sense of, I love my job, I still love what I do in that sense, but how can, just like you said, with the hearing, people reaching out and needing that either guidance or just that peer that's there, what else can I do? I 100% think if you've been in dispatch between 2 to 5 years, you need your hearing checked again. I think that I have seen so many people say that hearing has destroyed, or the hearing was destroyed because of this job. A lot of times people don't switch the headset sides. A lot of people wear inner ear headsets and that kind of thing. We have our radio ear, we have our headset ear, we don't take care of ourselves in the maintenance. Like, we go get oil changes for our car. You keep up with the maintenance on your car. You're the car of your own life, and you're not even doing maintenance on yourself. And a lot of it's because you don't know. There's no light that's going off that's saying, hey, your hearing oil needs changed or checked on or anything like that. So it's really got my gears kind of turning of what can I do? How can that be introduced?
Right.
And become common. So it's been allowing a few ideas to come in, just trying to figure out where, what to go. So if you or anyone else have any like suggestions, like I would love to see it become common of having hearing actually checked and having more well-being of, yes, mental, because it takes that toll, but also how can we make sure that all of the other maintenance is also okay?
Like some sort of NINA standard, huh? Some sort of standard, something. Either
standard or even just access. Access is such a big thing that, like, you don't realize that you need. You have all of these applications that allow so much more access to things, but we don't have them with ourselves, like, as the professionals that are doing the profession.
Well, I think that's why conversations like this and speaking with folks like you are very important, because you're living through this, literally living through it. Yeah. And I kind of feel like a little bit where you were, by the way, I love the analogy that you used with the vehicle maintenance and everything, that there's not a light bulb to tell you. However, sometimes we have people in our lives, people that we work with, who say certain things to us. And that technically is kind of like that light that's telling us, in a way, something might be up.
It's like great leaders.
But also, there you go. But also, what do we do when we see those lights sometimes in the car? We're like, I'll check it out later. Right. And it's basically the same thing when someone comes up and they're like, are you okay? And what do you say? Yeah,
always.
I'm all right.
I'm fine.
Or,
of course.
I noticed that, maybe you didn't catch that, or I don't know, something like that. Is everything okay?
I hate that question.
Which question?
Are you okay, or is everything okay? Mm-hmm. Especially because if the people in your life are those lights going off, they're not okay.
Yeah.
Don't ask. Even that simple statement that everyone hates hearing is, it's okay not to be okay. You don't want to hear that. That question, nobody wants to hear. We've got to find a way to say it without a question, because we're immediately going to respond, yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Like, everything's great.
So then what you're saying is you would rather, let's just say, for example, in this scenario, me come up and say just straight up, hey, I noticed you didn't hear that.
Yeah. I would much rather. I've had people.
Are you working, or are you?
What's going on?
Is even a better issues.
Have you noticed? Is even a better, because are you okay? We bottle everything up until we're not okay. Mm-hmm. We might not have even noticed that something has changed.
Right.
But you also can't be a jerk about it and be like,
of course.
I realize that you're missing all of this traffic, or,
Yeah, you're right.
My hearing, I noticed a change because I said, I'm not working where I should be at the level that I should be. And I took that step. I had a good friend of mine recently say, I feel like my hearing is messed up. I feel like my hearing's messed up. And she ended up being really sick, and there's fluid behind her eardrum. Of course your hearing's messed up, right? Oh, she's much better now, but it was affecting it. And she said, I might need to get my hearing checked. Even something like that, even as trainers or as supervisors, it's not just they might not be hearing it. They might not be understanding, or they're not good. They're not cut out for it. It's a lot more of, how can we adjust? How can we see if How can we work through this problem? And we want to be solution-based. Don't just come out at a complaining session. Come out with solutions, which has been a lot of, how could I do a solution? How can we do a solution? So I have some ideas, but.
Man, we're up on our time.
Yeah.
And which is crazy because it doesn't feel like we've been talking that long, but
No.
it is always awesome talking with you. So my last question for you is, what kind of leaders do you like to follow?
You said it very well, that are real. It's very easy not to get politics in this, but we just had a huge national political campaign. And it's so easy to play politics, and sometimes you have to play that but it's so easy to get caught up in trying to appease that sometimes you lose sight of what you really want to do. So I love the leaders that are real and that will be able to work beside you, with you, and guide you. It's not just me. It's not, I want to grow the ladder. It's let's all succeed as a whole. Like, we're one supposedly well-oiled machine. Let's keep it that way. And how can we make that maintenance so the vehicle runs better, so that the department, the agency, the profession runs better? So it's the leaders that have heart.
I love it. Emily for president next. Well done.
I don't know about all
that. Well said. Well, thank you, as always, for coming on. This was a lot of fun. And like I said, I could talk to you for hours.
Well, thank you.
So for those who are listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that'll be wttpodcast@gmail.com. The easiest way to do all of this is to simply go to links, and that's links with 2i's.co/WTT podcast. You'll find everything there: email, social media, where to hear the latest episode, as well as where to purchase the Imagine Listening books, and how to support us, the podcast as well. So make sure to check that out. This episode was sponsored by InDigital, a leader next gen core services. You can watch this on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn Live, as well as X, and then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.
You just listened to a Code 7 Network podcast. If you have any questions or would like to be a guest on the show, send an email to wttpodcast@gmail.com.